You probably remember losing to it, repeatedly, for reasons you couldn't quite explain. On the 31st of December 2020, Adobe instantly wiped out 2 decades of internet gaming history. Thousands of legendary browser games went dark forever, and the developers behind them lost everything. But one guy saw the apocalypse long before it came, and he built an empire out of its ashes. This is the story of how Swords and Sandals cheated death, and it's a lot darker than you remember. The Rise, 2005 to 2009, Flash era. Back in the early 2000s, browser gaming was an overcrowded, ruthless Wild West. If you didn't have a marketing budget or a massive portal pushing your game, you were guaranteed to die in obscurity. But a solo Australian developer named Oliver Joyce didn't need marketing. He had something better, a ruthlessly addicting core loop. The original Swords and Sandals provided no guidance or assistance to the player. In fact, it actively punished those who even attempted to seek help. If you allocated an excessive number of points in your strength attribute, a more agile enemy would inevitably make your gladiator appear both sluggish and incompetent. If you chose to ignore your vitality, a single unfavorable round would result in your gladiator being permanently lost. There were no checkpoints to save your progress and no mercy screens to soften the blow. Instead, you were met with a result screen that essentially mocked your failure. There were no tutorials. You figured it out, or you lost everything and started over. And that brutality, that complete refusal to apologize, was the secret ingredient. It kept the players hooked and created a specific kind of obsessed, wounded fanatic. The type who couldn't shut up about it, who dragged their friends to the same computer lab terminal just to watch them fail the same way. It spread like a disease. And that was the first sign that Oliver Joyce was building something different. Most developers chased virality. Oliver had accidentally engineered addiction. The core loop was seemingly fun, but it was a trap. Once you were in it, you couldn't leave. Oliver didn't just sit back and ride the wave of a viral hit. He hit the gas. Over the next 4 years, he completely mutated the formula. He layered in massive RPG progression systems. He built sprawling campaigns and even integrated early multiplayer. These were the features that were practically unheard of for a browser game compiled by just one guy. Most Flash games come and went in a week, but by 2009, Swords and Sandals was much more than just a game. It was an empire with its own lore, a rabid fan base, and a permanent grip on internet culture. But empires don't fall from the outside, they rot from within. And the ground Oliver had built everything on was already starting to crack. Mid-era, 2010 to 2016. By 2010, the browser gaming gold rush was over. Smartphones were in everyone's pockets, attention spans were evaporating, and the developers who ruled Newgrounds were waiting for their fate. That fate was the slow, inevitable death of Adobe Flash. Most developers ignored the warnings. They kept building for browsers, assuming the ride would never end. Oliver Joyce didn't. He realized his entire empire was built on a foundation that was rotting from the inside out. If Swords and Sandals was going to survive, it had to evolve. He went into a state of frantic experimentation. He stripped the complex RPG mechanics down to their absolute bones to create mini-fighters, a hyper-fast version of the game designed for a world that now demanded instant gratification. He aggressively pushed the brand onto iOS and Android, because those were the platforms that most Flash purists were actively mocking at the time. He was solving a problem nobody else in the indie space had the guts to face: how to make a 2005 stick figure gladiator work on a 2012 touchscreen. And here's what made that possible. No board of directors, no publisher, no committee watering down every decision. One guy held absolute creative control for every single call. In an industry where too many hands on the wheels is what kills franchises, Oliver never let go of it. But that solo control didn't bring perfection. It wasn't clean. The mobile ports were rough, the touch controls felt nothing like a keyboard. The screen real estate was wrong, the pacing that worked perfectly in a browser felt sluggish on a phone. Oliver had to relearn how his own game was supposed to feel, on a hardware that didn't exist when he built it. Most developers would have shipped something broken and called it a port. Oliver kept iterating until it actually worked. But the code wasn't what saved him. While AAA studios were hiding behind massive PR teams and his indie peers were going silent, Oliver stepped out from behind the curtain. He jumped onto Reddit threads. He recorded long-form devlogs. He sat down and talked directly to the kids who had played his games in computer labs 5 years earlier. He wasn't just updating a game, he was updating a relationship. Every devlog was a reminder to his audience that someone was still fighting for this franchise, that it wasn't abandoned, that the gladiator wasn't dead yet. In an era where most indie developers vanished the moment things got hard, Oliver showed up consistently, and his community noticed. He was no longer just building games, he was building a lifeboat. By treating his fans like peers, he built an insanely loyal parasocial cult following that money simply cannot buy, and he was going to need every single one of them. Because in 2016, the meteor finally hit. Adobe made it official. Flash was getting executed. No exceptions, no reprieves. Thousands of developers realized their life's work was about to become unplayable garbage overnight. But Oliver Joyce didn't panic. Because while everyone else had been enjoying the final days of the Flash era, he had spent the last 5 years quietly building a bunker. And what he built in that time is why this franchise is still alive today. Redux and Pirates, 2017 to 2020, turning point. By 2017, Flash wasn't officially dead yet, but it was on a ventilator, breathing its last. Oliver Joyce knew he had to get his franchise onto modern platforms like Steam, or it would die with the browser. But you can't just port a clunky 2007 Flash game to Steam and expect it to survive. He had to rebuild the underlying code from scratch. So he pulled off a brilliant Trojan horse strategy. He launched the Redux era. Starting with Swords and Sandals 2, he repackaged the beloved classics with modern UI, cleaner code, and native PC support. To the casual viewer, it looked like standard nostalgia bait. But it wasn't. It was infrastructure. By selling the remasters, he was getting his loyal fan base to fund the massive grueling task of migrating a 15-year-old franchise off a dying engine. Most developers treated their old games like a museum. Oliver treated them like a business asset. The classics were nostalgic, they were a pipeline, and he was about to prove exactly how far that pipeline could stretch. And by 2018, the infrastructure was ready. He released Swords and Sandals Pirates. It was time to see how far the franchise could stretch. This was a massive gamble. He threw out the very foundation of the franchise and dropped players into an open-world RPG where your choices actually shaped the run. It was the most ambitious thing he had ever built. It wasn't a viral smash, it was a stress test, and it told him exactly what he needed to know. Bugs hurt the early momentum, and pacing issues frustrated players who just wanted to grind in the arena. Oliver quickly realized that launching on Steam in 2018 was a bloodbath compared to launching on Newgrounds in 2006. The old word-of-mouth magic didn't stand a chance against the Steam algorithm. It proved to Oliver that the deep RPG mechanics of Swords and Sandals could survive entirely outside the arena. The Flash origins were saved. The proof of concept was complete. The only thing left to do was to build the game he had been dreaming of for 15 years. But first, the meteor had to actually land, and when it did, the entire industry was about to find out exactly how different Oliver Joyce was from everyone else. After Flash, Preservation and Modernization. December 31st, 2020. Adobe pulled the plug. Flash Player was officially dead. And overnight, thousands of browser games became unplayable. Entire childhoods were just gone. No warning for most players. You'd open your favorite portal, click play, and get a blank screen. For a lot of Flash-era franchises, that was the obituary. Not this one. Oliver had been preparing for this moment for years. The original SNS titles got ported to HTML5 and republished on free gaming portals. Pokey became the new home for browser versions, meaning anyone who wanted that raw, unfiltered 2007 experience could still get it. No Flash required, no downloads, just open a tab and fight. The Classic Collection on Steam handled the other side, giving the original 5 games a permanent paid home on PC with modern compatibility. Nostalgia with infrastructure behind it. But preservation was only half the strategy. Whiskey Barrel Studios quietly shifted its entire focus towards Steam and mobile as the primary platforms. No more browser-first development, no more Flash dependencies. The new pipeline was built for PC and ported to Android and iOS, maintaining the browser versions as a free entry point. The art style stayed consistent, the combat rhythm stayed consistent, the gladiator hero tone stayed consistent. That consistency was intentional. Oliver knew the brand's value was in its familiarity. If he had changed it too much, he would be losing fans who carried the franchise for 15 years. Most developers eulogized Flash. Oliver just changed the address. Swords and Sandals didn't need a browser engine to survive. It needed a developer who refused to let it die, and a fanbase loyal enough to follow it wherever it went. Both showed up. Now it was time to build something new. The current state, 2023 to 2026. By 2023, the Trojan horse had worked. The mobile port survived. The HTML5 funnel was pumping in fresh blood. Oliver Joyce finally had the infrastructure and the capital to build the absolute monster he had been dreaming of for 15 years. Swords and Sandals Immortals, the official 6th mainline game. This was a massive, unapologetic love letter to the hardcore cult that kept him in business. It featured a sprawling single-player campaign, brutal limb-loss mechanics, and a narrative that directly paid off storylines fans have been obsessing over since 2008. It didn't break the internet. It didn't top the Twitch directory. It completely bypassed the mainstream algorithm. And that was the ultimate victory. So look at where the franchise stands today in 2026. It is an impenetrable fortress built on 3 pillars. Steam holds the premium vault, mobile captures the casuals, and the free browser versions on Poki act as a massive chaotic funnel, pulling a new generation of kids in, just like the computer labs did in 2006. Most developers from the Flash era are ghosts, their games are dead links. But 21 years later, after a janky stick-figure gladiator showed up on Newgrounds with zero budget and zero marketing, Swords and Sandals isn't just surviving, it's still in the arena, and it's still winning. Why most empires fall. Here's the thing nobody talks about. The Flash apocalypse didn't kill bad games, it killed good ones too. Games with real fanbases, real mechanics, real developers who genuinely cared. They died anyway. Because caring about your game is not enough. The industry is littered with developers who built something brilliant and then watched it disappear because they built it on someone else's foundation. Oliver Joyce did something most developers never do. He treated survival as a design problem. Every decision was an answer to a question most developers never even thought to ask. What happens when the platform dies? Most people in this industry build for the present and hope the future is kind to them. Oliver built for the collapse, and when the collapse came, he was the only one ready for it. Swords and Sandals survived because one developer absolutely refused to let it die. But buried inside these browser games is a massive, highly classified sci-fi epic that 99% of players completely missed. And when you see the full picture, it changes everything you thought you knew about a stick-figure gladiator fighting in an arena. Most people played the game, almost nobody actually understood it.